DundalkTV is with Ross Parks, and Ross lives in Australia. I believe you told me it was Queensland?
Queensland is a state.
It's a state. Okay, and we have been talking a little bit about North Korea and how what is going on there could affect you and
Yes.
and the region, including Guam. So, what kind of information can you give us?
Well, here in Australia where I live about 100 kilometres north of Brisbane, the state capital. Most of the information that I'm receiving is through the media, as you can appreciate. I've been reading updates each morning as I wake up just to see the overnight news on what's transpired. The proposed attack of 4 missiles to be fired from North Korea at Guam. We're in the same time zone here as Guam. So as much as I'm in probably the southwestern Pacific, Guam's in the central western Pacific, but we're in the same time zone. But I've lived in places like Japan, and I know the flight distance is effectively about 10 hours to places like Tokyo, Nagasaki, where I lived years ago. But with Guam, I'm 4,600 kilometres south. So if there were 4 hydrogen bombs or any form of thermonuclear war targeted at that US territory, one has to expect that there would be some form of fallout that would affect the Pacific region. And unfortunately here, there's been no real, civil defence preparation, because we're in a country where we just never expected anything like this could possibly happen. We always expected the threat of a nuclear war would always happen elsewhere.
Well, how do your countrymen feel about what's happening now?
I think there's concern with most citizens. It seems to be a lot of rhetoric of 2 parties mouthing off, but some people describe it, I guess, again, it really depends on the information that people are receiving and really investigating between the lines. What's the truth and what is fiction?
Okay, so how do you feel about North Korea's actions?
I think it's recalcitrant, and I think it's narcissistic.
Okay, so you think it's pretty much he has an ego that he needs to be feeding right now and using his bravado as a leader to show force against the West?
Well, I don't know the person personally, but I think he has come from a generation of where his grandfather started up the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. His father was the previous leader, and now he's taken over. His behaviour seemed to mimic his grandfather, which is again different to what his father did. What I believe we're seeing is a person in charge of a country that has had issues with the West for probably since the truce that was written with the UN back in 1953. It's a war that's never been settled, and I think he is looking for settlement, or at least the bravado, as you put it, the ego to at least be the winner. And I don't think there is any winner in this one.
You know, if you don't mind speculating or giving a perspective of your countrymen, what do you think about how President Trump is handling things?
Trump's an interesting mix, because I guess in Australia, as much as we're probably an American-based lifestyle and English law country, we are very aligned to the United States for defence, where we're very aligned to China for trade. We're a very mixed race. But answering your question straight, I think a lot of people in this country predicted Hillary would be the president. Trump seemed to get in on less vote, and irrespective of Russian hackers affecting, I think it was 21 out of your 50 states for the result. How Trump is handling it, it seems to be a lot of he said, he said. So it's just a lot of rhetoric in Twitter. I don't really think that's the right way for a leader to behave.
Okay. Well, I greatly appreciate your honesty on that, and that's what I wanted. So, and your countrymen, would you feel the same as you do?
I think it's a generalisation. I think there are those that support him. I think there are those that are mixed. There are those that are against him. I couldn't give you a statistic.
Okay. Well, I can tell you. Well, let me ask. What do you think if Obama was in there? So who would you rather have right now in office?
Well, if you'd said Clinton, I would have said that's probably the man to have. But then again, probably Reagan was a good man, or Jimmy Carter. They seem to be more peace people. Jimmy Carter brought peace with Egypt and Israel. Reagan brought the wall down with the Eastern Bloc. I think since from those presidents forward, we've had nothing but conflict, except for Clinton. So if Obama was there, I think you'd still probably have conflict, yes.
Well, I think I'm personally happy that we have someone that is not backing down and is willing to say we're not going to put up with that. And I'm not saying that I want a war, but I'm saying Obama, as far as I'm concerned, would have rolled over and been very passive to things that were happening. He showed that many times, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm glad to have someone who's not afraid to stand up and say we won't tolerate that. So and I don't think that that's going to be a bad thing where it causes further troubles. I actually think it's going to help stop them. I think he's going to meet his match. That's the way I feel about it. And I have to say, it has to be, that's not in my backyard. This is in your backyard. So and that's why I wanted to. This is why I wanted to interview you about this.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I guess in this part of the world, as I say, I would never have expected this type of thing ever to have happened. What's funny about this, there is a TV movie that was made back in the 60s with Gregory Peck called On the Beach. And it ends in Australia, where a US naval nuclear submarine is left. It can't go back to the Northern Hemisphere because of the radiation. And the world ends in Australia. And it's just interesting. The storyline is very similar to what's mapping out here. So sometimes you wonder what is fiction could actually become fact.
Okay, well, we've been friends on Facebook a little while, but we really just started interacting a little bit. And I read one of your post about North Korea, and you had a lot of information in that post. And you were talking about that you went to Nagasaki and Hiroshima, that you had actually saw those areas, and that you had talked to survivors. So that's something that I don't think that I'll ever see. So could you tell me about how that felt to you and what it was like to speak to survivors of the nuclear blasts?
Extremely emotional. Going to the peace museums in both cities, you get to see the Peace Memorial and you get to see replicas of the bombs that were used on the day. So they are the only two cities that have ever suffered from a nuclear explosion. Very small compared to what can be used today. But to meet individuals that were, I wouldn't say fried, but suffered greatly. But mind you, what went on at the end of World War II, something had to be done to bring it to a closure. But it was extremely an emotional, traumatic experience to meet people that had been through that, yes.
Okay, now I would assume that you had talked to some people that had lost loved ones during that time period. So that's only assumption. So did you meet some people that did lose loved ones during that time? I know you actually met people that were exposed, but the ones that lost the loved ones, how did they feel about that?
Meeting families and working with colleagues over there that had friends and, of course, family that had lost people in the war and had lost people during the atomic blast. So there's still a little bit of stigma with the older generation over it. The younger generation are a little bit more adaptable to new ways. So there's still an old generation that is almost dying out.
I'm going to ask you what your advice would be to President Trump from your perspective, sitting where you're at, and what you would like to see happen and what you think would bring the best resolution.
One thing, the best resolution, and it's something I picked up particularly on things like Facebook, when a comment was posted, it was about we're going to win, or the fact of the matter is this is the way we're going to run it. What I didn't see is really the feeling of exactly what must be going on through people in South Korea, what must be going on in people in Japan. And if you've ever been to both countries, you'll understand, I guess, what I call the passion of these people for their fellow citizens. They're very close people. And to be at least honoured, to at least be a part of their circle and socialise and work with them and be respected. I think for President Trump, I think he needs to understand that culture a little bit more. Diplomacy is probably the best key, but I'd love to see the two leaders sit down in Geneva and really just, through interpreters, find out what the issue is. It's like the school bully picking on another school bully, and it just goes on and on and on.
Thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us. Just hoping for the best with the United States, also for Australia, and glad that you are an ally to the United States. And thank you so much, mate. I greatly appreciate you doing the interview.
You're welcome, and I wish humanity a peaceful outcome wherever you are on the globe. Thank you for your time, Scott.
Thank you.